We're gonna start out with a video, because I'm a rebel, and I like to live on the edge. This is from one of my all-time favorite movies, Blast from the Past. If you're not a millennial, I know you've seen it. And let's go.
From the customer. And the software engineer. Yes, that's I just have to ask, why couldn't the customer just directly with the software people, huh? Well, I'll tell you why. Because engineers are not good at dealing with customers. So you physically take the specs from the customer? Well, no, my secretary does that, or the fax. So then you must physically talk to people. Well, oh, yeah, I mean, sometime. What would you say you do here? Well, look, I already told you. I deal with the goddamn customer so the engineers don't have to. I have people skills. I am good at dealing with people. Can't you understand it? What the hell is wrong with you people?
Love that. Christine could have used this video too, right? Having your customers, talking to them, do you guys want your engineers talking to them? All right, it's 1999. Marlene graduates from college, coming out to Silicon Valley to be rich. Two things my mom told me: don't get into cars with strangers, and don't meet people from the internet. So, where are we today? We literally summoned the strangers who took Uber to come pick us up and get into their car. I should have listened to my mom, though. I didn't follow point number 2. I met both of my ex-husbands on the internet. True story. So from our dinner last night, we talked about sliding door moments. That was the sliding door one for the after hours. So think back, again, if you're not a millennial, in the 90s when you first encountered the internet, what was your first online community? IRC, yep. MySpace, yep. What was that? Yeah, AIM, eBay. When I was thinking about this, reflected back in the 90s, I was an intern at Microsoft. And this is what the Microsoft website looked like. Pretty cool. I had to do my Google searching to find this because I thought it would be a cool visual. And I don't know if you remember back then, but there was a lawsuit the DOJ did against Microsoft for saying collusion, that they were going to embed the browser with the operating system, and that's going to be unfair. All right, so back then, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have social media, we didn't have email. How would people communicate? There was the news, there was your newspaper. Anybody write into their local newspaper editorials back in the day? That's how you got your opinion out. And so what I actually remember from Microsoft, and this is pretty revolutionary, so this is their own browser, the thing that's being attacked. And if you look up in the upper corner, it says Microsoft and the DOJ, what's your opinion? This is the first time I'd ever seen anything about engagement. Now it seems basic, but back then, nobody had any way to engage other than those big conglomerate media outlets like the TV and the newspapers. I think that was really cool to think about 20 years ago, the way that we were living our lives and the opportunity that we had to engage, and the opportunity that this provided the customers, the users of Microsoft's products, to talk to them about what was going on, really fundamentally changed the way that we would work in this world. And kind of thinking through that now, where we are today, and then in the future, what is it going to look like to provide customers with effortless experience? Because this was effortless. This is the internet. This gave us access. And what is it going to look like in the future? I'm going to walk you through the program that we built at Zuora called the Zuora Community and talk about some specific ways recently that I feel like this provides us with an effortless experience at scale. And when I talk about scale, it's not just, okay, Zuora is a startup, we're going to grow the customers, we're going to grow the footprint, that kind of stuff. We need more people, more of this. It's also about scale fundamentally changing the way that we interact internally, and how we then go out to the customers in a unified fashion. We've talked about it a lot, things, how when teams become disconnected, the customers see that, and the customers will react really poorly to you, especially in B2B. And so one of the fundamental things with the community is to how we can actually have people interact with us, and it looks like one Zuora. It doesn't look like a whole bunch of different teams with your product team, your marketing team, your customer success team, your support team, and your engineers who don't always talk to the customers. So we'll go back in the past, not too long ago. I've been with Zuora for almost 9 years, so almost since the beginning. So kind of like the lay of the land, a couple years in 2014, when I would think about the way that we were operating, we had gotten more customers, we had gotten more employees, and I'm from the East Coast, does anybody ever do crew rowing? So how about kayaking? Anybody kayaked with their significant other in a double kayak? So what happens if you don't do this right? Not only are you not gonna win a race and go fast, you're gonna like go sideways, you're gonna go backwards, you could flip. It becomes super dysfunctional. And that was kind of what we were seeing internally at Zuora at the time. Kind of like lay of the land. Again, I run like support, was part of customer success. So like all companies, we started building a bunch of portals, right? They were all different portals that customers go to, support portal. We had some forums, we had some online documentation, just kind of where we are from an engagement side, 400 customers, about 400 weekly tickets. Wasn't like that was good or bad or anything, it was just kind of engagement. So I'm going along being, my support manager role. And then finally, like most startups too, you never had a budget. Like no one ever told me any money. You just kind of hire people when you get told, oh, look, there's something, you can go hire somebody. And so I got, here's a budget. So I started doing the math of how much it was costing me to support my customers. It's $220 a ticket. And we're B2B. We have a bunch of Zuora customers in the room, Wix and SurveyMonkey, Blue Jeans. And so like our product's subscription management revenue automation. So all the way from when you acquire a customer, if it's on an online portal or assisted sales, B2B, through like subscriber journey, subscription management, to advanced revenue recognition, which is automation, so you don't have to do it in spreadsheets. So it's not easy, any of these types of tickets. And so what happened, it was expensive. It took a lot of different, really highly skilled people in support to do the work. And it was about 7 people at the time. So I'm thinking, like, how are we gonna scale this? Like, how is this gonna work? And when we looked at, we use Zendesk for ticketing, you have all these great answers in the ticketing system. Customers don't have any way to know any of this stuff. So all of our internal people knew some of it, but it wasn't getting out to the base. And so I would classify us as kind of this, classic mid career-ish startup in the Valley. Although I do say this is 5 years ago. I think now if you look, companies are actually thinking much more proactively about where they should be on the customer success and also like customer support side earlier on, because I think we've learned a lot of these lessons along the way. But from our side, it was very disjointed customer experience. Again, there was different portals all over the place. Like our own employees were just getting really tired of feeling like every single ticket, every interaction, they had to kind of start from scratch. They'd have to go, okay, what did this, I have to go collect this data, I have to go talk to this customer, I have to go talk to the product team, go talk to the engineers, figure all that stuff out. And when employees would left or just all that, oh, I knew it was that thing, I knew it was that thing, like that kind of tribal knowledge would get lost. And then new people would join and there was no way that they would actually be able to know any of the stuff that was going on. It was really expensive, from a per ticket, per engagement perspective, and it wasn't gonna allow us to continue to grow the business at that rate. You're not just gonna be handed headcount to keep going up. You also, like the year over year increase in the tickets that I was seeing was anywhere between like 15 to 25% more tickets. And again, from a perspective of scaling, that's just not gonna work. You're not gonna have to be like keep hiring people to be able to fund that. So we were gonna pivot. And what we decided to do in launching the community isn't just like I had with Microsoft, not just a place that people can do forum-based conversations, but actually change the way that internally that we're gonna work as a company and the programs that we can provide, and then have that customer experience fundamentally shift and look and feel different for the customers without them even knowing, oh, it's because of a quote community, which is just another online platform. And I've done talks specifically on just community, and people ask a lot about metrics and views and all these and data. Like the panel is talking about data. Like data is great. We all love data. But I think one of the best points of data that still doesn't get represented in just those numbers is actually what the customers think. And you just go talk to them. And sometimes it can completely dismiss what you're thinking your data is coming up and saying. So I'll give you an example of that in a moment. We launched the community in 2016. This was one of the funnest years I ever had at Zuora. It was basically a global tour that I went around the world to all of our different offices through our in-person live subscribed events and user groups, and got to literally, I was walking around in Stockholm with an iPad at the happy hour, signing people up for the community, like our customers. It was like, hey, why not? Like that's how you engage. You actually get in people's faces. And we came out, with some pretty standard things that, go back, that you would have, like product-based boards, discussions on that, community solution articles. So this is a common thing we found. Here's a solution. Ideas forums, so that customers, instead of just sending a ticket that would go into the Jira and be the black hole of nobody would ever know what's going on, have an idea here, people can vote on it, it's linked to a Jira, and then the product managers can decide whether they want to do something with it or not. Announcements, user groups, virtual user groups, which then translated to stuff that was in person, and blogging sites. So pretty cool stuff that we launched, walked around, got people to sign up. But just because you have this doesn't mean that it's actually gonna work, right? And back to the mission of the community, I wanted to actually change the way that we are interacting at Zuora. Actually fundamentally change the type of jobs that people have and how they do their job. And so when I thought about that from that perspective, kind of like the key words I was thinking is, how do we unify all the different portals and things without having to do a big IT SSO solution? I do still think we should do something towards that, but it wasn't an actual reality that we could have. But how do we still provide a unified experience for the customer so they're not digging around thinking like, oh, where do I find information on how do you do the latest create call with your upgrade functionality and workflow? So unify it, scale it, and then don't fail. And really being able to create those changes to the customer experience in a way that looks pretty cool and transparent to them. So a couple of these examples that I'll show you. Conversations that matter. Like, how many people have a list of all their customers, email list? And how accurate is it? How many bounce backs do you get? We all loved email like 20 years ago when it came out, even 10 years ago. I predict that email will go away at some point in the next 5 to 10 years. It's become such a thing where we are having to filter it and importantize it and urgent it and like all these things. And as a communication vehicle, it gets out of date all the time. When you collect your contacts in Salesforce from the sales team, and then all of a sudden, like we get contacts, also from Zendesk. You get contacts from people that are like actually using your actual application. They have another email address. You don't really know who to talk to at any time. And when you have a mission critical system like Zuora that's literally taking in revenue and money, you can't afford to miss out on telling people things that are going to go on in their system, particularly the admins. So what this is an example of, anybody heard of TLS 1.0? It's a very techie protocol term, literally 20 years old. So we're like, all right, this is bad. Security team's like, got to get rid of it, right? So we're like, okay, so we'll just tell people. You'd be surprised how many different systems actually still use this 20-year-old technology. but the customers don't know. So what's the typical thing that probably your companies you do, you'd send an email out and it would say, we intend to deprecate this. You have until this day, action required. And what usually is gonna happen? Who knows who got that email on their side? They probably don't even know what to do about it. And so they're gonna either ignore it, which is bad, because then they do nothing, and then on the day that we cut over, they're not gonna be able to take orders. Or they freak out and they contact support, and they're like, I don't know what to do. And now we're like, well, how do we know what to do either? Because we're not the ones using all your integrated systems. We just know on our side, we're gonna shut this down, basically stop the door. So what, instead of doing just an email, we put this now, because we had our community, we put this out there to the world, and now all of our actual customers that know what to do or knew what systems are going on, they could start talking about it. So it became this literally one of the longest threads that we have in the community, just going on and on about different things, how other people are approaching it, how other companies were handling this thing like that. And just as opposed to email, which is very like a support ticket, transactional, one-time way, go out, and then that's it. This became an opportunity for people to actually talk about it and figure it out. And it took a long time too, and things would continue to evolve and change, but it gave us a platform and a way to actually have a conversation that mattered to a broad audience and get all the different inputs in there to then ultimately people could make the right decision and know that they weren't going to be turned off on the day that we launched it. So from a knowledge unification standpoint, this is really cool, and also refers back to when people are talking about search. So search is usually some kind of cool algorithm, and then stack ranked results, which is good. And like Alon said, you do find a lot of your own customers use Google before they would use the proprietary search that you would have, just because the Google has more money, it has a better search, and so people were doing that, and it was just kind of hard though when you think about the different types of collateral that we had in all of our portals, and then the time-based sensitivity of something. How can they actually know that they're going to find the right type of information that's the most relevant to them, and not have to just go through like all the studies show, if you're not on the first page of the Google search, like what's your chance of the link getting clicked through? So how do we actually like pull that content in better? So we embedded in the community a sophisticated search from a company called Grazidi, and it doesn't look like it's super dramatic, but it actually really changed the customer experience. We got really great feedback on it because of this navigation on the side, where I can actually pick the source of where I want. So the search topic up here is invoice template. Who knows what they want to do with that or what kind of thing they want? And now, do they want to see ideas that have been posted on it? Do they want to see like answers that have been posted on it? Do they want to, we recently put a data source in there that is curing our Zuora University program, which is a paid subscription training. But how would somebody know like that there's actually something in there that was going to cover this topic? Well, now we can have it indexed, and then it could pop up, and that might be an upsell opportunity, because they're like, oh, cool. I know this training now would actually address some of my things, so I can go out, reach out, and get that. And then again, the time thing. So sometimes you don't want to, like, how many times do you search for an answer and then you get an article that's 6 years old, and you're like, well, that's not what I wanted. I wanted the one from last week, so you can do that. So bringing all that knowledge in together, really easy to use. They don't know there's like a special search behind here, right? Really transparent to them, but gives them, now I get way less feedback saying like, I don't know where to go in Zuora to like find all this stuff, because you guys have 4 different portals that have all this different search. Just go to this one and get all the searching from there. Digital buzz, so back to our talking to the engineers. One of the things as we moved forward from in Zuora and was kind of thinking about ourselves, like the conversation I was having earlier about Stitch Fix, saying that they're a data company, where most people think, oh, it's clothing. But it's really about them capturing information, analytics about data, and then making recommendations on clothes. So when we were thinking on the Zuora side, we started in 2008, 2009. The tech stack that we went with, was of 2008, 2009. And fast forward as we moved in, it needed to be upgraded. And so how do we also change the perception? And we got a lot of negative kind of developer feedback too, because we had old APIs, really old way of documenting them, and really like trivial, like it seems trivial, but kind of like a lot of feedback that was making developers not want to select us. And so as transforming ourselves into thinking of being a forward-thinking technology company, one of the ways we did this is we actually allowed engineers to have a space in a blog to start talking about how we're incorporating new technology into the product. And this is very organic, it's homegrown, it's not like it's coming from marketing or PR, and it's also targeting the install base, right? Where you have a lot of product marketing has to go out and look at prospects and look at how you're gonna get new logos. This is really targeting to like developer, engineer. These are the things that we're implementing. Zuora, here's the new ways you're gonna be able to interact with us and make it cool and fun and utilize the platform to make it exciting and do cool things. Our LA program too, so like limited availability, like in a traditional model, product manager, they pick a bunch of customers to do the beta with, they email them, they have like meetings with them, and then all that information though gets lost. It's emails to the customer or emails to the product manager. If the product manager leaves the company, you don't have it. Customers don't see what other customers have. And so within the community, we just made a group, put them in there. They get to talk to not just the product manager, also the engineers. So a typical product manager engineering kind of tension is that engineers are like, well, they didn't tell me to build it like this. Well, how about you just listen to the customer and see it right there? It's in the community, it's live. You don't have to go dig in the Jira, you don't have to go look at even like a support ticket. Just see it right here and manage the program from that way. Community all-stars, probably everybody, when you think about a community, you're like, and you're from support, you're like, oh, it'd be great if somebody else answered my questions, right? That sounds good. But I think of it as way deeper than that. It's that our customers actually know what we should be doing better than we do. We might understand the product from the actual, here's product, it does these features, but they are actually using it every day, real application of it. And so the insights that they have are going to be so much more powerful to other customers like them. If you go to any of your own customer kind of conferences or events, why do companies put them on? They like to talk to each other, right? Your customers want to know what other customers are doing with your product. And this was from our subscribed user conference in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago. Once we launched the community, we started getting people that were really active. So at the second subscribe, we had our first all-star community award on the big stage from a guy called Jacob over there. And now a couple of years in, every year we're doing these types of programs, giving them special shirts, all these things. And when you look at kind of the information that the community gurus write on the posts, it's way more interesting than even just a support person. Because again, our support people are very trained on the product. They're not living day to day using the system. So when you have your people that are all-stars are mobilized and get rewarded for that, it really makes a difference in how they see not just how we interact with them, but also how they interact with each other. From our favorite movie. You could open a ticket, that would be great. So it was about a year and a half ago, I was at a user group for the community platform that we use, which was called Lithium at the time. And we were with other companies. We were the smallest company, Zuora. So we were with Microsoft, Autodesk, Google, and these different people. So it was like a 20-person user group. And they were talking about these big companies about, oh, we have so many so many things in the community that are old product, like old screenshots, old conversations about something that doesn't exist anymore. And so there was a whole discussion about archiving. Like how would I, physically actually do it from a technology perspective, like move the articles off, and then like how far back, or something like that. So I'm like listening to this and like we don't have that problem. We still don't have it now. We're not that big. We don't have like millions and millions of users yet. And so I was like, wow, but one of the greatest things about comparing a ticket to a community article, I talked about the one on TLS 1.0 going on forever. It really is like the never-ending story. It keeps going. It's a conversation. And you'll see this on all those message boards. Sometimes people pick things up that are years old. was like, if we archived off all those conversations, what are we cutting off and taking away from our customer base? Or think about it too, if we actually took away all of the internet, we say everything that happened less than 5 years or 5 years ago or more, we're gonna get rid of it, what would happen? Like I wouldn't have even been able to get that screenshot. So I'm not saying people shouldn't archive, things. Like I think definitely on a product knowledge center that we have, when we leave old stuff out, it confuses the customers and makes it really not a good experience. But I think I like to think of from the community perspective or just the knowledge that we're creating as a world, that if we were to take that away and archive it, it would fundamentally shift the way that us and then our future generations are even gonna think about that, right? And even have access to that. So I would recommend keeping your stuff there. I like to do kind of out-of-the-box thinking exercises with my team. Like once a quarter, we do these leadership on-sites. So we go to a Zuora office around the world, bring like 10 to 15 people. And there's always a homework assignment that involves people doing homework and some kind of presentation. So this homework was something that I did at an offsite last year in Boston. Anybody heard of the PwC Future Worlds of Work study? It's like a 40-page article. And it's talking about in the year 2030, what will the working world be like? What's gonna happen? Like when you think about, you got the industrial kind of media complex, you have government regulation, you have environmental impact, and then you have kind of social people things. What kind of jobs are we gonna have? What's the structure gonna be? Are we gonna be, right now we're all used to working for companies, most people, right? You can also be an independent contractor. But what would the world look like if we were actually, you just have yourself and your skills, you put it out to a marketplace, like an eBay or like any of those, and people just pay you for what you can do, and you wouldn't be tied to a company. So different ways of kind of thinking of what it's gonna look like in 2030. So for mine, I went with, you take this quiz too, of like kind of based on your personality, which world would be most interesting for you to live in 2030. So I did the quiz and I got the yellow world. And the yellow world really celebrates people and individuality and puts kind of like people at the source of what we should be doing. And I thought that really paired well with kind of the theme today about being effortless, because when you're the customer and if you actually become part of the product, you actually become impacting it. You're like on our ideas boards, you're voting for what you want. It doesn't seem like customer support at all. It doesn't even seem like customer experience. It just seemed like you're part of the actual thing. And then that's what we all kind of want, is to be close to into a tied community. So I thought of this and was thinking about, okay, so in 2030 for Zuora, the headline is Zuora's customer success team mobilizes a record number of sourcers. So I come up with this kind of fictitious theme called a sourcer or a Zorcer, because we put Z in front of everything. And I'll just walk you through this kind of fun scenario. So very true, customer success is the #1 value at Zuora. And what we decide to do in 2030 is we mobilize all of our users on the community to be part of our crowdsourcing project. So you can see it here. Popularly known as Zorcers, Zor's play on the word sourcer. Customers serve as freelance employees, so nobody's tied to an actual company, replacing the need for a large corporate workforce while simultaneously reducing the overall traditional software processes which distract us from customer value. Again, talked about earlier what Christine said of, you get all this feedback and then the roadmap doesn't change. Well, what if you don't actually have to do that at all? What if it actually looked like this scenario here? Oh, it's like a buildup, not a video. Okay, so think about the ideas board. So you're a user of Zuora, a Zorcer, you post it, you vote on your feature in the community. Or there's a next panel coming up on AI. So we have AI running. It looks at who you are as a customer. It looks at your company data, and then it decides which features that we should be actually building. So we don't need some product manager in an ivory tower. The actual AI is going to look at who you are, who your company is, what you represent, and determine what that is. AI predicts what we should actually be doing with the feature and the use cases for you. Your engineers build it. They do an early release of it, like our early adoption things. And now you give it out to the community to actually test it, report things back in, all the defects back into an AI engine. Engineering does it. They release the feature. And then the AI engine will start to learn from anything that comes in. So pretty popular kind of concept of crowdsourcing, and then incorporating the AI into that. All customers use it. Any issues or questions with this are submitted into the AI, and it's going to figure out what to do from there. And it's able to provide answers to most of the questions. And for anything that is unknown, it's going to actually send it back out to a Zorcer around the world. And there are companies that are actually starting to do this now and support. I think like you'll see a lot with B2C, just same thing we'll talk about with chatbots and stuff. It's faster because they can figure out how to do like scripted workflows. So it'll be a little harder for B2B. But like I told you, with our all-star communities, those people know the product and know what they need to do way better than some of us employees that are just really into our own world of not actually using it, but just understanding it from a functionality standpoint. And then those Zorcers reply, submit the answers into the community, the AI learns from it, and then they make recommendations for people on those training courses that we have. And what the headline would be for this is I could see a world where the community then just becomes what you need to run your business. You don't need to have support at all. You wouldn't need to have any product managers. You could do everything on the online community. And I do think it's really important to think about these things when you think about your job and what you think we should be doing. I did a panel once where I said I think that the product manager role could disappear one day. And I do believe that I think they're going to fundamentally have to move towards a model where we're not just getting voice of the customer feedback and then having to sit on a roadmap perspective. We're actually integrating all that experience into how we interact with the customers and having them predict what we should be doing. Questions?
Owen, if you don't mind, which works. Oh yeah, beautiful. Here you go. The big moment.
Too. So back earlier slide, you talked about $220 to basically manage a ticket.
Yeah.
How's that customer journey changed today? I mean, if you look today, I'm sure things have changed. That type of thing.
Yes, good question. So the year after we launched the community, instead of having a 20% year-over-year increase in tickets, it went down to 1%. So it was like dramatic ticket deflection. And then year over year, it hasn't gone as low as 1%, but it's definitely way less. So from like an economics perspective now, when I run the numbers, and I have more, that was 7 people at 220. Like now I have 100 people, and some are not support agents, and some are in real cost-effective areas in India. But the cost is around 100. So it is dramatically different in that way. And we continue to find with the programs in the community, just the views. Like someone was saying earlier, like the views on the community articles outpace the number of tickets we get. And while you can say, okay, not every view represents a ticket, it kind of does in this situation. No one's really going to look at like a solution article that says, how do I configure the invoice template to be able to show this type of a good chance like that's your customer and they're not just looking around for fun. So I do think it's really, it's something that we track, but now you're at the point now where the community actually has more deflection, more things going on than your actual tickets that are coming in.
So what kind of companies do you admire when you look at what they're doing? Again, comparing yourself, I know you guys are doing a great job of who do you look up to?
From like from a community
From
perspective.
community, yeah.
Yeah, I think you know, for me early on, before we had the community, but when we had Zendesk just forums, this was still, you know, back even before 2014. There was a lot of fear, you know, from sales teams and the executive teams on talking about any of this stuff. They were like, well, if you put up the ideas board, people are gonna, our competitors are gonna know what we don't have. We don't want them to know, right? And we don't want the customers to know. I had a product manager, a head of product joined, and this is 2012, and she came in and she saw that we had this ideas thing, and she's like, Marlene, I don't like that. I'm like, okay, why? She goes, well, I don't want my customers to tell me what my roadmap is. It was literally the statement. And so I'm like, okay, you want me to like put it behind a login? And she's like, okay. And then she left, and I put it back to like transparency. And now you look now, like most of the time when you're gonna launch a community program, you're not gonna get executives arguing that you have to like hide this stuff, because social media has made it, you can't hide. So why would I wanna hide, like if I'm not talking about it on MySpace, or not MySpace, the MySpace, but if I'm not talking about my community space, somebody else is gonna go somewhere else on Trust Radius or whatever, they're gonna talk about your stuff. So you wanna own the conversation, you wanna own the platform, you wanna be the one talking in your thing, and you want to have, people are going to have problems, like they're going to say this is bad, they're going to say on ideas, oh my god, it's been 4 years and you still haven't done this, that we have those threads, and then you do it and all the noise goes away. And so like one of the early ones that I admire and still admire to this day is Salesforce, because they were one of the early pioneers that did an ideas board, and they have a whole algorithm that's taking the upvoting and the downvoting or whatever and popping those things up. And then they have like tracking, and even like they measure like their MBOs against delivering features that customers want. And so we haven't evolved to that point. But in that way, you know, like what is a good product manager? Is it somebody that builds the best feature for like your new customers, or is it somebody that's building the best features for the base? Something in between, and how would you actually quantify or track that? This type of like that combining of data on a community with some kind of metrics that would be, you know, voting and that kind of thing, I think that'd be really like powerful in a way that we should be thinking about it as we move forward. All right.
So I have a question. So when focusing on community, I definitely agree that it's great to have the community self-serve and assist each other and kind of create you know, the fanaticism behind the product. But when looking at it also from a customer support perspective, when do you find it especially when looking at the data, that it's beneficial to have a support team member or, you know, an engineer or product manager definitely engage in the conversation, and when is it not beneficial?
Right. I think if you see people, and we do like on our product boards, we'll have like the leads of our SME teams like monitor those. If you see customers giving like blatantly wrong advice, then you want to kind of interject. But I think one of the things that we find is that it's one of the kind of foundational principles of Zuora too. Like when we were founded, companies weren't doing subscription services. You had your phone bill, and you had like a cable bill, and you didn't think of that even as a subscription. Maybe you had like a physical magazine subscription. Remember when people would go door to door and sell you the magazine, it would come 4 months later? And you know, so we were founded recognizing that the world is gonna shift to a subscription-based model. And so I think that's like where you can see the our ability to transform and be able to think like, okay, it's not just we have the answer as a support rep. We'll have partners write ideas. You can have not just the support person, you can have the global services person write something. And sometimes there are different ways to look at it. It really takes a community and giving all that information. Like the same thing why I wouldn't archive stuff away. If someone writes something that's wrong, you don't want to just delete it. You want to, you know, enlighten them in a nice way. Like, hey, you know, maybe like that's like, oh, that's not completely true, you can actually do something like that, right? And then too, if you find people on the community, sometimes the ones that are writing like, oh, I can't believe you don't have that feature, or they're coming across in more of a negative sentiment, that's an opportunity to engage someone that really cares. Because everybody thinks it's really hard to get somebody to change their mind if they're against you. That means they actually care. You have a better chance than if they say nothing. If somebody says nothing, they're probably never going to be your advocate. But if you can actually bring them into the conversation and they're resisting, and you're like, hey, this is what we're thinking about this, you can actually convert them into a promoter.